you got a game board with you, or?
I'm afraid I'm much more boring. So. Yes, after all that joy and games and everything, I'm going to come right back down to the sort of boring old humdrum stuff. Firstly, I'd just like to thank everybody for the opportunity to come along and talk to you and wish you all power on what looks like an absolutely gruelling schedule over the next week or two. I really don't envy you one tiny little bit. I'd also like to thank everybody for your work that came about subsequent to my presentation on the Mayor and the Chair, where we raised the concerns regarding the proposed cuts in funding to the community grants that you make available. As a result, I've heard that you have acknowledged that this was a mistake, and I'd like to really thank you for following up on that and for getting back to us with that reassurance. That presentation did provoke some public comment and some comment around the role of the not-for-profit sector, what it ought to expect from the city, what we ought to expect from government and so on. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the sector at present. I know I've done a presentation to you some time ago about the diversity of the sector. The range is not just social services, but health, arts, environment, history, recreation, so on, and the role that it plays in community well-being. We know that it covers everything from direct service provision down to building social capital. And boy, if we hadn't had social capital in our city, we'd be in a bigger mess now than we could imagine. It's that social capital that enabled our communities to pull together and to work together and to carry on through this difficult time. We also know from what Rob Gordon's been telling us and the international evidence around disaster recovery that now is a really difficult time in the process. And it's a time when typically the social indicators get to their worst. We are seeing peaks in demand for counselling, for other services. People that haven't thought they were managing have finally realised that they're hitting the wall, and there's increasing demand on our services. And some of the commentary after the presentation was around, well, why are they looking to the council, why not government? So I'd just like you to visualise a pyramid, and actually we'll turn the pyramid upside down, so the point's at the bottom. And that point at the bottom, the sharp end, is the most acute service requirements, and they're met by central government. So we're talking about Ministry of Social Development through Child, Youth and Family, we're talking DHB, we're talking about the hospitals, in-house mental health care, we're talking about the prisons, the courts, the probation and so on. Those services are delivered directly by government. And what I'm hearing from the not-for-profit sector is that line is actually shifting down lower and lower, and more of that's being moved out of central government to the next tier up, which is the contracted services from the not-for-profit, mainly not-for-profit sector. Okay, some of them are contracted to private companies, like for instance age and dementia care is provided by groups like Ryman and Oceania, but a lot of that next tier up, that still critical social service and health service delivery, is provided under contract to government departments and picked up by the not-for-profit sector. And they're the ones that are stopping them falling down to the bottom of that upside-down pyramid, to that sharp point, and ending up in the government services. Now, you'll have heard that the relationship Aotearoa is in trouble at present, looking like not getting funding from government. We know that there are several community groups, service providers that are already closing, downsizing. We know that government has got a new program coming out. They're restructuring the way they're going to fund these groups through the contracts that they provide. What we also need to really be aware of is that central government has a policy of not funding for 100% of what they contract the groups to provide. So if you're contracted by central government to provide 1,000 widgets and you've costed it out, it's going to cost you $100 to deliver every single one of those widgets. Government will only contract you. They'll pay for about 30 to 70% typically. So maybe 50, 60% is paid for by the government, but you still have to meet 100% of the service requirement that's in your contract. And the government's philosophy is, if the communities need this service, then community needs to contribute to the cost. And so that's why you get the social service and other providers who have government contracts also coming to City Council, also going to community trust, lotteries, all these other funders, who are the ones, you know, they're doing the fundraising and so on, because they have to meet the balance of the cost of providing for that contract in order to meet their contractual requirements to central government. And we're hearing that central government is tightening that up, and we're hearing that as from next year, groups that have for some time been contracted, you know, long history of contract to government, will not be getting their contracts again, or will be getting reduced contracts and will be having to look elsewhere. So I'm just giving you notice now, from next year you're going to be seeing a lot more demand from agencies in this city looking to be able to maintain those essential services. Then the next layer up the pyramid, and our widening base, is a lot more of the community groups that you guys will know from your work on your local community boards and so on. And they are the ones that are building the social capital, and they are the ones that are stopping the next, you know, helping people to stay well, stay connected, stay engaged, and not be isolated, so that we have a healthy, strong community. And they are the ones that are looking to you as well for the support and keeping our communities going. We've just done a book, and I know some of you have already got our book, Holding Hope Together, and those of you who haven't, I'm coming to your community board soon, and you'll get one then. And that tells the stories of just a few of the not-for-profits, and they're the ones that people don't think of in disaster recovery. And we're talking about things like, I'll see if I've got them, see if I can flick my hand to them really quickly. The School of Music, you know, where they lost their premises, they were, whoops, upside down, where are we? We're talking about the kids, you know, they're really keen to get playing and to be able to get back and forget about things for a while, doing something that they loved doing with their friends, and just making music is a really powerful healer for children, for everybody. So that's not an organisation that you'd think of providing a direct service in disaster recovery, but that's some of the role that they have. The New Brighton Community Gardens, a lot of anxious people wanted to be around other people and the comfort. And then just to start to focus on something that was a known quality and a routine, and something would actually grow. And what grew was a sense of hope and stability. So these are the groups, in order to keep supporting our communities to get through this really rough time this year, next year, before we start to turn the corner and leave the difficulties of the past behind us, that are still going to need all the support that they can get to keep your communities connected and well and strong and happy and able to come out the other end and really enjoy their lives in the new normal that we will be living with. Thank you.
I think that one of the things that you know I've kind of raised before, and you'll be familiar with it, is the idea that instead of just funding individual organisations on a year-by-year or even 2 or 3 year, but actually looking to build the resilience within communities, and that means probably devolving stuff that we do as a council back out to the community and resourcing them that way rather than so much. So I mean, and that's the work that we're going to be doing over the next wee while, is how do we get our grants so that they connect with other funders, and how do we make sure that community organisations are resilient in the true sense of the word, i.e. that they're sustainable over time and that they do meet the needs of their communities? Because I don't buy the argument that you have to pay for it to value it, but it has to be meaningful engagement with the community.
I think there's a real unmet need at present for all the strategic thinkers from across the not-for-profit sector, from central and local government, from the funders, to sit down and talk about what are our needs as a community in Christchurch.
Or what are our strengths. And
what are our strengths, what are our needs? Just do a really good in-depth scrutiny of where do we go from here, and not have it as an ad hoc, a bit from here, a bit from there. I've got this good idea, but you're doing something else. You know, I'm one of those that grieve the loss of the long-term council community plan, because who's doing the planning for the community as a whole. You know, the central government don't have that degree of local knowledge. After the quakes, MSD was great at pulling together the not-for-profit sector, but they really relied on the City Council's strength and community staff, really, and the not-for-profit sector itself to be able to find those grassroots groups, because the only ones that central government knew about were the ones that they contracted to provide services. So I think there's a real need for that good, solid planning with all of the strategic thinkers, wherever we can pull them in from,
Yeah, I
and
agree.
see what we can do together.
Phil, last question. No, we've gone over time, and I was just, I'd caught your eye, but
Okay.
if it's okay,
Look,
we can...
No, I will ask my question. Sharon, you're basically saying in terms of your submission that, especially given the history of cuts, and this recent one isn't another cut, but that in fact, community development with a plan, say, is part, really, at least an equal partner with the resilient communities, that in fact this council should try and make up to organisations like yours what has been lost.
That would be wonderful if we could. In the past few years, where's my grants figures? Back in 2019, the grants were 10.7 million. That's the Strength and Communities grant. This year they'll be 8.7, so there's a loss of $2 million just since 2009. And of course, none of the other funders actually give cost of living increases yet. You know, it's so people are kind of, you know, we say the sector manages on the smell of an oily rag, but the smell in that oily rag is getting quite faint at present, because for the most part there are not, you know, the grants don't keep up with inflation, and you know, you get new groups coming along and old ones fall out of favour, and it's not necessarily to do with the value in the community, it's just what captures the imagination of the funders.
Thanks,
So,
Sharon.
yeah, it'd be really good if we could get back up there. And it does, you know, when you see that, you know, all power to economic development and the fact that Canterbury Development Corp, they get the cost of living increase and a non-contestable grant from you guys.
Yep.
COSS lost a lot of funding after successfully winning the court case over the social housing increase, by the way, just mysteriously in this organisation.
Thank you for that helpful addition. Thank you. Thanks very much, Sharon. Good to see you.
Thank you.
And could I now call Hugo Christensen?